Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3 teenagers. Today, my guest will be talking about estrogen dominance and how it affects your overall physical health, men and women. And I know that you really need a strong physical foundation in order to work on your mental health and spiritual growth, whether it's overcoming anxiety and depression, losing weight, or detoxing your body in the proper way, and even increasing that level of frequency in life. You need that strong physical foundation of health in order to gain the willpower to make the bigger changes in your life. If you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you get there. You can find my health articles, my cutting edge natural supplements, devices, and protocols at Accelerated Health Products is the sponsor of the show. So as you support my website, I'm able to bring you more cutting edge content and guests to the show. But first, I wanted to talk about some tools that you can help with your physical, mental, and spiritual health to live your best life, reverse aging, balance those hormones, and increase your mitochondrial health, because our mitochondria is where the energy comes from. So number one is my flagship product. It is the product and the supplement that really turned my son's life around when he was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 9. And that's Accelerated Scalar Silver. It is unlike any other silver out there. It's enhanced with scalar frequencies, but it enhances your immune system's ability to devitalize foreign pathogens, including viruses, bacteria, funguses, and parasites. And if your immune system is bombarded with fighting certain foreign pathogens, it can't simultaneously engage in anti-aging mechanisms or autoimmune issues. And by keeping your immune system strong, the body engages in anti-inflammatory processes, leading to optimal health. And like I mentioned, it's enhanced with scalar frequencies to increase its efficacy. No other silver solution has this. Next is the Accelerated Keto, and this is not just any ketone supplement. It flips you into fat burning within 30 minutes, and your body taps into its own fat stores for energy right away. You feel great physically and mentally minute 1, and you get this sense of, I can do this. Okay, tell me what to go do. I can do life so much better. When the body's running on the ketones produced by the Accelerated Keto, combined with intermittent fasting and a low carb diet, utilizing high proteins that are wild and the right kind of proteins for your body, instead of utilizing glucose for energy, ATP production increases significantly in the mitochondria, and mitochondrial biogenesis is optimized. What does that mean? That means your energy shoots through the roof at the cellular level in body and brain. Furthermore, the additional ingredients in the Accelerated Keto break down the saturated fats into unsaturated fats, and these unsaturated fats are easier for the body to utilize and easier for the body to convert into ketones. So what does this mean? This means that when you're fasting, the body fat's more readily available to burn for energy, which increases ketones and autophagy. And that autophagy is the cleaning up of the diseased and the junky cells that just need to go away. And that is enhanced. Because of this property, Accelerated Keto is able to actually defat the liver as well. And as we are going to talk with our guest about estrogen dominance and the importance of liver health, we need that fat out of the liver. The liver is responsible for converting stored fat into ketones. The more the liver is defatted and unclogged, the easier it is for the liver to function in all areas, including break down fat molecules into usable energy and increase that thing that we call mitochondrial biogenesis. The liver is also where the thyroid hormones convert from the inactive T4 to the active T3. And as it becomes more functional, the thyroid works better, increasing metabolism, mitochondrial function, and your energy. And then furthermore, the accelerated keto has HMB, which prevents muscle wasting. And as us women and men, after we get 40, our muscles want to just go away, and it's very easy to lose them. And so that HMB protects the muscle that we have on our body. There are some other ingredients in there, including the organic mucil and tricatu, that heat up the digestive fire, allowing for a higher absorption of ketones and increase your metabolic rate. So as I mentioned, it is not like any other ketone supplement. And with that is the other no-brainer for everybody. I don't care what diet you're on, how old you are, every single human being on earth needs the acceleradine iodine. Sufficient iodine in all tissues and cells help produce 18 times more ATP than without it. And 96% of the United States is deficient in iodine. It is not in our diet anymore or our soils. And the iodine that we are getting is usually toxic or full of radiation. Acceleradine is the only iodine that is 100% bioavailable. It is scalar infused with the energy or the frequencies that are going to help detox the body from radiation and from heavy metals, and actually reverse damage to the DNA from mRNA, graphene oxide, and all of the other things that we are being bombarded with recently. It increases that ATP, which increases apoptosis, which is the dying of diseased and cancer cells. And it also helps with fat oxidation. It's going to help with your thyroid health. It's going to help with cleaning out that liver. And that ATP production is going to skyrocket. When you take that, you combine it with the accelerated keto, the accelerated silver, and then some other things that I'm going to mention in a minute. But the ATP increases. What does that mean? Your brain fog goes away. Your connection to your higher self increases. You feel so much better. And to follow that, you've got the accelerated ancient salt, which most salts are full of plastics. This salt, it has 62 minerals. It is infused with the scalar frequencies to further enhance its ability to pull out positively charged toxins, parasites, and undigested fats. We need all of our electrolytes, especially if we're on a low-carb diet. But this also can bring you out of a blood sugar crisis. Even if a diabetic is really high in their sugars, this can bring that down. It can also help satisfy your appetite when you're craving sugar. It can also just help balance you when you feel nauseous, or if your digestion isn't on. It helps break down those fats. The result from the scalar energy is a high frequency energy that reorganizes the DNA. And as I mentioned, it helps with nausea, digesting fats, rehydration at the cellular level, and it enhances detoxification. So it also tastes amazing. I don't ever use any other salt. Next are the stem cell patches. And the one I wanted to start with is the energy enhancer patch, because what does it do? It increases ATP production, and that means we have more energy. So you put this in conjunction with the accelerated keto and the acceleradine, that ATP shoots through the roof. And it also increases heart rate variability, improves the bioelectrical measurement or phase angle or the integrity of the cell walls, and decreases inflammation throughout the body and increases endurance. Some mornings I wake up tired, I put on my patches, and within 20 minutes I'm ready to go and do my workout, whatever it is. And my workouts at 46 are just as strong as they were in my 20s. I feel better than I did in my 20s. And I really contributed to all of these things I'm talking about. When you put on the X49 patch, that increases energy and recovery, but it also increases muscle tone, which is really important as we're getting older, and it helps burn belly fat, especially. It also is known to help increase the hair growth and the thickness of your hair and turn hair back to its original color. I don't know about you, but most women and men right now are losing their hair, whether it's from COVID or hormones or something. Hair loss is a big issue right now, and the X49 is really helping bring that back. And it works in conjunction with the X39 patch, which is the basic flagship patch, which resets over 4,000 genes in your body to a younger state and helps increase your own stem cell production, helps with inflammation, and it helps with your organ function. It really just makes your body act as if it's your 20-year-old self. So there you go. That is what I really stand by as far as getting your best energy, reversing aging, but I give more tips and tools through my free group coaching on Telegram. You can join with the link below on Telegram or email me through the website at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. The difference between me and any other group coach is that I provide the most cutting edge frequencies to enhance the most cutting edge frequency enhanced supplements that work synergistically with each other, and your body doesn't experience those flu-like symptoms. You truly do feel great day one. Leave a comment below if you're interested, or check it out on the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Now to the good stuff. Kate Vazquez is a functional medicine physician assistant, founder of Radiant Health, and the award-winning author of the bestseller, Estrogen Is A Bitch. She helps ambitious women naturally balance their hormones so they never notice their period again. Wouldn't that be nice? Perform their best every day and become the confident leader, wife, and mother they aspire to be. And for you men listening, don't go away, because we are going to also talk about you. Welcome, Kate. How are you today?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just so honored and blessed to have this conversation, because it's a very important conversation for both men and women.
It is. And as I'm 46 and I'm learning a lot more about estrogen dominance, and you kind of, for me, I always knew that I love testosterone because it makes me feel so good, right? And I always like badmouthed estrogen because there's some downsides to it, but we need estrogen. So maybe we should start with why we do need estrogen and how we shouldn't be just looking, down on it, and it's not just the evil one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question, and it's definitely a great start, because even though my book is called Estrogen Is A Bitch, but that's because it becomes a problem when it's imbalanced. But at the end of the day, I really want to educate women and help them understand that estrogen is not bad. We do need estrogen. And that's because when we go through puberty, it's what gives us our curves. It's also what keeps our skin like nice and plump. So like when we go through menopause, when we lose estrogen, that's why we get that saggy, wrinkly skin. But not only that, it's also very, very protective of our organs, especially our brain. It helps us with memory. So when we go through menopause, we lose estrogen, we're more prone to Alzheimer's and dementia. It also protects our heart, our blood vessels. So again, going through menopause, we lose it. We're more prone for cardiovascular disease and heart, blood pressure issues and all that. Same with insulin resistance. It keeps our insulin levels optimal, but when we go through menopause, we're more at risk of insulin resistance, diabetes, metabolic disorders, etc. So it's really, really important to support healthy levels of estrogen in the body because it's so protective. So the key here is having that right balance, and I also like to call it the Goldilocks hormone. It's like, with Goldilocks, not too little, not too much. It's the same with estrogen. We want the right amount in the body, not too little and not too much, and our body functions optimally.
You just hit on something that I wasn't even going to approach, but as you're talking about estrogen and insulin resistance, PCOS is something that I suffered from. It's what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the insulin resistance cause a low estrogen and the PCOS or high testosterone, or did the imbalance of the hormones lead to a greater insulin resistance?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And, it's so interesting because with PCOS, we're so focused on, yes, it causes insulin resistance, high testosterone or androgens, even DHEA. So someone will have high DHEA and normal levels of testosterone. But what's not looked at is it also comes with high estrogen. And so there aren't really a lot of studies out there. It's like, okay, does estrogen contribute to it, or is insulin resistance contributing to the hormonal imbalance? But I think that's a really, really good question, because at the end of the day, when there's inflammation in the body, estrogen actually regulates that. So if we have a lot of estrogen, it can turn on inflammation. When we have a lot of inflammation, that can also create that insulin resistance. But then also, too, we look at the other side. If we have a lot of insulin resistance in the body, that can create more inflammation, which in turn causes our body to produce more estrogen. So it's hard to say sometimes, like, which one comes first, but I think it's different. I think it varies in different people, and I think this is also where testing is key, and not just, like, going to your primary and just getting regular blood work, but, like, let's start looking at these specific markers when you're young, because then we can really start to understand, okay, is it the insulin resistance that comes first, then the hormonal balance, or vice versa? So I think there's just still so much that we haven't even learned yet when it comes to our hormones, but there's definitely a role there. And I even talk about it in my book about insulin resistance, because when women do have insulin resistance, and it's not just in menopause, it can happen, perimenopause. It can even it's even happening in children, in kids. And think about that. It's like when kids are going through puberty, when their hormones are changing, it's important that we have healthy insulin and glucose levels. So when there's insulin resistance there, that causes the body to gain weight, and our fat cells, especially when we're producing hormones, will produce a lot of estrogen. So it's like, if you have insulin resistance, you start gaining weight. Now your fat cells are producing more estrogen, and that can create this estrogen dominance, that I see commonly in women. So yeah, that's a very great question. I think there definitely needs to be more research around it for sure.
And then it's like a vicious cycle, because then the body produces more fat cells, which produces more estrogen, which then leads to more weight gain. And a lot of people will say, I don't understand. I'm eating the same way as I was eating 10 years ago, and I can't get away with it. And so let's define, what is estrogen dominance?
Yeah, absolutely. Because estrogen dominance is a big medical term, and it's so funny because being or having a Western medicine background as a physician assistant, I didn't know what estrogen dominance was. And it wasn't until I got into functional medicine I heard this term, and I'm like, okay, what is this? But it basically is just talking about this imbalance of estrogen and progesterone in the body. Because if we understand how hormones work, especially in women, our hormones are constantly fluctuating throughout our menstrual cycle. And we tend to have estrogen that gets produced in the first phase, which is the follicular phase, but we also get a little bit of estrogen during our second phase, which is the luteal phase. And then we also, during the luteal phase, get that production of progesterone, which we don't in the follicular phase. So we're always having estrogen in our system. So it's really important in the follicular phase, the second half of our menstrual cycle, that we produce progesterone, because progesterone does help balance out the effects of too much estrogen in the body. It helps create that healthy balance. The problem is when there isn't enough progesterone in the system, or there's enough progesterone but there's a lot of estrogen. And what I discovered was that there are 3 different types of estrogen dominance. And this is very, very important, because when you go to treat someone that you suspect has hormonal imbalances and estrogen dominance, not everyone should be treated the same. And you can even Google it. You can Google estrogen dominance treatment, and they'll lay out all the supplements, but you have to be so careful. So the 3 patterns of estrogen dominance that I would see is normal progesterone levels and high estrogen levels. The second one was low progesterone and normal estrogen. And then the third was low progesterone and high estrogen. And now, that was the most common that I would see: low progesterone and higher levels of estrogen. And this is why it's important to understand the pattern, because when you Google the treatment, they'll recommend DIM, which is great. It helps support the metabolism of estrogen, but not every woman needs it. And you can actually feel worse when you take it. It can actually cause headaches and really worsening of your menstrual cramps. So you have to be very, very careful and work with someone who has this understanding. And also Vitex. Vitex is a wonderful herb, which helps to naturally support progesterone levels. But if you have PCOS like you did, it can actually make your PCOS worse, because what it does is it increases a hormone called luteinizing hormone, LH. So normally we should have a 1-to-1 ratio of follicular stimulating hormone, which is FSH, to LH. But in women with PCOS, they have a 1-to-3 ratio. So if you take Vitex, because, I think I have estrogen dominance, I need to support my progesterone, it can make the PCOS worse. So you have to be very, very, very careful and, work with someone who's going to do the testing to figure out, one, is it present? And two, which type of pattern is presenting, so that way the practitioner knows how to best support your hormones.
So is there a way other than testing to know which one you have?
That's a great question. It's really difficult. I mean, some practitioners can start their patients and clients on specific supplements, like one at a time. I always recommend do it one at a time, especially if you're not testing, because if you throw a lot of supplements at a person and all of a sudden they feel worse, you don't know which one's making them worse. So, worst case, if there is suspected estrogen dominance, you could always start on one supplement like DIM, for example. And if you start to feel worse, then okay, your body probably doesn't need it. But for me, I love to do the testing first. And even if it's just blood work, you can get blood work done through your primary doctor just to look at the hormones, especially women. It's really important to look at it, get the testing done during the luteal phase. It's a specific time of the cycle to really see, that ratio of progesterone and estrogen in the system. And so, for example, if you have a regular 28-day cycle, which actually most women do not have a 28-day cycle, but to make it easy, the best day, which I call the peak day, is day 21. So that's basically 7 days before you start your period, is the best time to check that. But if you have like a 30-day cycle, that's going to be day 23. So working with someone who understands like when is going to be the best time is going to be helpful. But to me, like, I like to just know exactly what I'm treating, and I get that from the test.
So DIM is full of cruciferous vegetables, and cruciferous vegetables are, and what I talk about, are some of the healthy foods that could be disrupting your detoxification pathways. And the sulfur group of vegetables are one of those groups that don't work for some people, me included. And actually everybody in my family genetically has a hard time with detoxing sulfur vegetables. So if you've got someone like me, but I need some supplement for the estrogen dominance other than DIM, because that might back up my liver and, do the exact opposite of what I'm wanting it to do. What would you recommend?
Absolutely. Great question. Yeah. So you probably don't need support in phase 1. And that's what DIM targets is phase 1 in the liver. So then I would focus on supporting phase 2, which requires B vitamins. So like B12, folate, B6, also magnesium is really good and important. And then looking at the gut, because that's going to be important too. So when estrogen gets broken down in the body, it goes through the liver first. We have that phase 1, phase 2, and then it goes to our intestines and it gets eliminated through our poop. And so it's really important that we look at the gut too. And in fact, actually, that's where I start with a lot of my clients, is to see what's going on in the gut. Because if we have issues there, so we have what's called the microbiome, which is trillions of microorganisms, so bacteria, viruses, even a little bit of yeast, parasites, and everything should be living in community with each other. It should be like a healthy, happy gut, But if there is like one bacteria that wants to come in and take over, think of like the Trojans coming in and taking over, it can cause something what's called dysbiosis. And so when we get this dysbiosis in the gut, there's this enzyme that kind of hangs out and monitors everything. It's called beta-glucuronidase. But when this dysbiosis happens, it increases, like alert, it gets increased. And what it does is it takes inactive estrogen when it leaves the liver and turns it back into its active form. And we don't want that, because our bodies are meant to produce estrogen and then get rid of what we don't need and get rid of the excess. But when this beta glucuronidase, this enzyme, is turning it back into its active form, now the body's like, oh, okay, we're not getting rid of it. Let's bring it back in and use it and keep using it. And that's where the problem lies. So for you, if you're having that estrogen dominance, I want to see what's going on in the gut. Do you have that dysbiosis? Because maybe we just need to fix the gut and help you to get rid of it. And maybe that's just where the issue is.
And that makes sense, because a lot of people that I deal with have leaky gut or dysbiosis, but then they're also gaining weight and they don't understand why. And it might not be just the fact that they're not able to break down their foods and they're bloated, but they're actually recycling that estrogen that is enhancing the weight gain. So it's once again a vicious cycle. And it just goes back to the body is so complicated and in this intricate system. And it's not about calories in, calories out. It's not about just going to the gym for an extra hour a day. It's all of these little things that you've got to tweak and really find what's going on. So that takes me back to, let's talk about what are the symptoms of estrogen dominance.
Yeah, I mean, symptoms are everything. It does help give us an idea and pinpoint. But yeah, I realized when I was looking at all the different symptoms, because there's a lot, and there can also be overlap with the symptoms of estrogen dominance to other conditions. But I pulled out, like, what are the 5 top symptoms, like the telltale signs. The first one is irregular periods. So, and this applies to women, that are still cycling, that still have their periods, but also women as they start going through menopause, they'll start to get the irregular periods. And that's because the first hormone to decline is progesterone. And so when women are experiencing irregular periods, we should be having a period about every 28 days, plus or minus a couple days. So plus or minus 2-3 days. But if you're not having a regular period, one month you have a 30-day cycle. The next is a 42-day cycle. The next time is a 35-day cycle. It's just kind of like all over the place. It's not regular. That is not normal. Now, it's normal as you start to go through menopause, obviously, because your hormones are declining, your body's not producing them. But if you're still cycling and that's happening, you definitely want to get checked out. So that's the first symptom. The second one is really heavy periods. And that's because estrogen is responsible to thicken what's called the endometrial lining, which is this lining right inside our uterus. And that's because we are biologically made to get ready for pregnancy, to have a baby every month. And so it will thicken that lining. And so if pregnancy does not occur, we shed that endometrial lining. So when there's a lot of estrogen in the system, it really causes a thick endometrial lining. And so women will experience really heavy bleeds. So on average, we should be changing out like 6 to 8 tampons or pads per day. But if women are changing out more than that, and it's like really soaked through, like it's normal to have a heavy period the first day or two, but still changing out 6 to 8, pads or tampons. However, if you're changing out 10, 12, and there's completely soaked through and it's lasting more than a couple days, that's not normal either. Plus also having a lot of clots, like the size of like quarters, that's not normal either. So that just means there's a lot of estrogen in the system. So that's the second sign. The third sign is PMS. And that's because whether women are going through menopause or even while they're still cycling, if the progesterone levels are really low, they're going to experience those mood swings, the anxiety, the depression. Progesterone also helps us sleep at night. So a lot of women will experience insomnia. They can't sleep. Also, when there's higher levels of estrogen, what happens is it increases this hormone called prostaglandin, which is a chemical that causes inflammation in our body and helps our uterus to contract so we can release that endometrium and have our period. But estrogen increases inflammation, causes more of those prostaglandins to be released, and causes really severe menstrual cramps. So if you are curled up on the couch or have to go to the ER, spending your Friday night in the ER because of those severe menstrual cramps, that is not normal. And that too is also another sign of estrogen dominance. So I got a little tickle. So the fourth symptom is breast tenderness. And that's because, again, with estrogen, it causes increase of the breast tissue. It causes that breast tissue to swell. So when women are feeling tender, swollen breasts right before their period, that's from estrogen dominance. But also as women start going through menopause, we'll start to develop like fibrocystic breasts. That too is from that excess estrogen. And then the last symptom is the weight gain that we've been talking about. And it's interesting because when we look at weight gain and the distribution of weight in the body, when we look at weight gain in the abdomen, we can pinpoint it to, okay, high cortisol,
Right.
Insulin resistance. But with estrogen dominance, when there's a lot of estrogen, remember in puberty, we get the curves. So when we're gaining a lot of weight, it's going to go in the butt, hips, and thighs. So that's probably like the most telltale sign. When women are gaining a lot of weight in the butt, hips, and thighs, we know that's from estrogen dominance.
So a couple of things I want to just touch on with, as you're saying, irregular periods could be a sign of estrogen dominance, but that can also be a sign of PCOS. But you're not going to have the heavy periods with PCOS where you would with estrogen dominance. So that's where the 5 signs and symptoms would make sense. So, and all of this is making sense to me because, I have 2 daughters and all 3 of us have different cycles and different issues. My one daughter becomes very insulin resistant right before she has her period, and she will have very bad cramping, and just day one, it's horrible. And I never had that. That was not an issue with me. So it's interesting to see all of the intricate signs that each person has individually and how their blood sugar is even related to this. But we're going to take a short commercial break, and you could get another sip of water, and we will come right back and continue talking about estrogen dominance with Kate Vazquez. Welcome back to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sara Banta, the owner of Accelerated Health Products. And today we've got Kate talking about estrogen dominance. And this is a topic we could go on for hours. So I'm trying to squeeze all my questions in because it is very, as we've touched on, it is such just a fine dance with your hormones. And someone could be totally fine during a decade of their life and then have estrogen dominance or go back and forth. And there's a way to correct them. And so that's where it's really important to do the testing like you're talking about, but just also do that gut check of like, okay, does this feel right? I love how you talked about PMS as a symptom, because us women just figure PMS is part of what we're supposed to go through, right? But it's not normal. We're not supposed to have that PMS. Kate, I want to jump to the thyroid, because I would say not over 90% of human beings have suboptimal thyroids, and they affect our whole endocrine system. They affect our energy, our metabolism, our brain health, our brain fog, just everything and anything. But they also have an impact on our hormones, including estrogen. So can you talk about the relationship between the thyroid and estrogen dominance?
Yeah, there's so much there. And I've had a lot of clients come to me with thyroid disorders, and I'll ask them, like, have they even checked your hormones? Because they'll have problems like really balancing out that thyroid, especially on medication. But even if they're not on medication, if they're showing signs of like high elevated antibodies, like the thyroid peroxidase antibody, it's really important that we go and look at estrogen, because remember, I talked about estrogen does regulate inflammation, but it also regulates our immune system. And so it can be linked to a lot of autoimmune disorders, especially with the thyroid, Hashimoto's. And so when estrogen is elevated, it's imbalanced, and the body can really ramp up inflammation, which then can also increase our antibodies, especially like the thyroid peroxidase antibody, and also can turn on our immune system. But also estrogen can increase something called thyroid globulin binding protein, which will increase the binding of thyroid hormones, especially it prefers T4 over T3, but it'll bind up both. And so it's important to look at the hormones, because if you're having issue balancing the thyroid and you have excess imbalanced estrogen, that could be the problem. It's causing this protein to increase, which is binding up all your thyroid hormones. And that's why you're struggling to improve symptom-wise, especially when it's coming from thyroid. So it's really important to look at that hormone piece. And that's really the biggest factor. But also, with the TPO, I always look at, okay, what's causing inflammation in the body? So again, like addressing all the lifestyle factors, the gut, et cetera, but also, let's look at your hormones. It's okay, estrogen's imbalanced, so it's going to create that inflammation, cause elevation of those antibodies too. So that's really like the relationship between thyroid and estrogen.
So with that, just personally, I know that when I'm leading up to having a period or on it, that my gut motility is slowed down, that my thyroid slows down. So I can actually feel a up and down in my energy and my thyroid function. So is that why? I mean, can you explain why that would be?
It's definitely possible, because I mean the hormones are constantly fluctuating. Our sex hormones are fluctuating throughout our menstrual cycle. And so a lot of women will experience either increased motility, they'll have diarrhea, or they'll get constipated right before their period, just because of that fluctuation of estrogen and progesterone. And in fact, progesterone also is like a diuretic in our body. So if we don't have enough progesterone levels, we can actually get constipated. And so it's so interesting how that works. Progesterone helps to draw out fluid. And so actually no, I take it back. The progesterone is a diuretic, so it helps to draw out fluid, which is why a lot of women will also feel puffy. So
Right.
if you have low levels, then it can definitely affect the gut for sure. And so with the estrogen too, going back to the gut, if there's excess levels, that can also affect and contribute to constipation as well. So that does make sense, like when you're feeling it with your menstrual cycle.
Yes, because I would say most women complain about constipation around their cycle. So it's really interesting how so you're saying progesterone, low levels of progesterone cause the lack of motility in the gut and lead to constipation and maybe even water retention, because most women do retain a lot of water around their cycle as well.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not necessarily the relationship or the ratio of estrogen to progesterone, but it's more of that progesterone's low.
Well, when progesterone levels are low, that can create that estrogen dominance effect too.
Right.
So it too can create that, because remember the two different levels. So it's like it all plays a role. It's all impacting each other. So yeah. But you're absolutely correct. The progesterone will contribute to that.
Okay, now I want to switch to a very interesting topic that I wish I knew about 20 years ago, is birth control and how it messes with our body, maybe makes our skin look better and us feel better temporarily. But what is happening with birth control and our hormones?
Yeah, there's so much with birth control, because I was on it for over 15 years as well. And what actually led me to learn more about estrogen dominance, because when I came off of it, my hormones went crazy. I never had PMS. Like, I went on birth control for acne. And when I came off, I had very irregular cycles. I had the severe menstrual cramps, the breast tenderness. And so what we're not taught when we're taking birth control long-term, birth control actually can impact our gut. It can contribute to leaky gut. And I experienced a lot of gut issues while I was on it. So I had to do a lot of healing in my gut. Now, it's not the only thing that contributes, but it does impact the gut lining. There's a lot of research, a lot of studies that show that. So yeah, it can definitely contribute to that. Plus, you're taking in a synthetic estrogen. It's not, the estrogen that your body makes. So it's being metabolized differently, and probably not even effectively as well, especially if you have issues with the liver, and it does impact our liver. Another thing that I discovered is that our liver produces something called bilirubin. And bilirubin is what produces bile. Bile is stored in our gallbladder, and this is important because it's what helps to break down fat. The importance of bile is also to help bind estrogen. Once it goes through the liver and becomes inactive, it binds to bile, then goes to our gut for the elimination. So if our liver's not producing enough bile, because birth control impacts, it actually decreases the amount of bilirubin that's produced. We're not producing enough bile to get rid of all that estrogen, especially that synthetic estrogen, So that's another thing. And it's so interesting because a lot of women, if they don't have gallbladder issues, will develop gallbladder issues while on birth control. And I've even had clients come to me on birth control with gallbladder issues, ask their doctor, oh, did the birth control cause this? No, you're fine. And I'm like, yeah, I think there's a link there, especially if you didn't have it before. And women that had gallbladder issues were put on birth control. And I'm like, no, because it's just going to make it worse. And so it's important that we understand like what birth control is doing in the body. Now, I understand like there's a time and place. Like for me, I would rather work on balancing the hormones naturally and doing everything that we can. And if we've done everything that we can, the last resort is birth control, then the last resort is birth control, But I also want women to understand and have this informed consent, like what's going to happen in the body if they do take it long term. Because it's going to impact the gut, it's going to impact the gallbladder. It also decreases progesterone. The synthetic progesterone also decreases the motility of the gallbladder too. So you have that component too. And it increases a protein called sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. And this protein is really, really important because what this protein does when it increases, it binds up our sex hormones, and especially testosterone. And I experienced this as well, being on it for so long. When our testosterone drops, we start losing our hair. Our libido goes down, and it's so crazy because they don't tell us about this when we get on the birth control. Like, oh, you're going to lose your hair, you're going to lose your sex drive. And so when I came off birth control and tested my hormones, I had low levels. Actually, I don't even think they were detected. It kind of scared me because I'm like, what happened to my testosterone? And my sex hormone binding globulin was high. And so some women will continue to have high levels, but there are some things that we can do to bring this back down. And it's just really supporting the hormones, make sure you're exercising, eating healthy, etc. But yeah, that's another big component that women don't know about, that can really impact your body, your hormones long term, that's not talked about.
Well, and if anyone has been listening to me for a while, they know how important keeping your liver and your gallbladder are healthy, and that's our detoxification organ. And I protect my liver like it's my fourth child. And I do flushes a couple times a year, and that's what I recommend for my clients. But if your gallbladder and your liver are backed up, they can't do all of the functions. They can't detox you from the radiation and the heavy metals. They can't do that conversion of T4 to T3 for our thyroid, and also process the estrogen, right? And so it's like this vicious cycle, and it's domino effect. Either it's running like a fine-tuned machine and everything's working perfectly and you feel great, your energy's great, and the weight's staying off, and your brain feels good, or all of these things are falling apart. There's hardly anyone that comes to you with like one symptom. right? It's like all of these symptoms that are connected, and it's one root cause. And what's so great about functional medicine is you go to the root cause instead of dealing with the 10 symptoms, because you try to deal with one or two of the symptoms, you're going to create more symptoms that you have to address. So we just have a few minutes left, which I knew was going to happen. Kate, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we go? But I'm going to have you back on because there's so many other questions we haven't even addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can totally do a part two. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much. And that's why I wrote the book, Estrogen's a Bitch, because I realized this is a common issue that women are not aware that it's not normal. It's not normal to experience the symptoms they're experiencing, the PMS, the irregular periods, the heavy periods, the weight gain, the fatigue, especially if they're doing everything. They're exercising, they're eating healthy, and not getting the results. So it's like, we got to look at the hormones and make sure we're supporting the body, supporting the production, supporting the metabolism of estrogen, and then that will bring everything back into balance. So that's why I wrote the book, to just talk all about it, all the different causes, because we could do a whole segment on the different causes of estrogen dominance, but I dive into that in the book. Also, I created a quiz. If you go to my website, yourradianthealth.com, you can take my quiz, and it's an easy, like, are you likely to have estrogen dominance or not? Because I can't diagnose you. I don't know, but based off the symptoms, you can go through the quiz and see, is there a likelihood that you could have estrogen dominance? And with that understanding, then you can, follow up with a practitioner and get the protocol best for you. But you can do that right now to take that quiz if you're on the fence, or if you're like wondering, like, oh, do I have this? Like, I'm hearing, what Kate's talking about, a lot of the symptoms. Could I have this? So that's the easy way. Head to the website, take that quiz, and then pick up my book. You can find the book on Amazon. I have all formats: paperback, hardcover, Kindle, and the audio version. And you're going to learn so much information and even simple steps that you can start taking right away to really help balance those hormones.
And I promised that we were going to talk about men, and we haven't touched on it, but I just wanted to throw in that real quick, that with men, I mean, if you are eating right and your testosterone might even be at a normal level and you're exercising, but as you get older, it's just not happening for you. It might be too much estrogen, which we didn't even talk about stress causing a rise in estrogen or the imbalance of hormones. So definitely going to be doing a part two. But in the meantime, everyone go out and buy the book. This is a huge, complicated topic. It is. Obviously, our bodies are so intricate, and it's a fine-tuned machine. And I always said, weight gain and weight loss is not about calories in, calories out. You can't eat just like 100 calorie little snack packs 3 times a day and starve yourself and lose weight. It's not going to work. It's all about getting your hormones right, working out, but not too much, right? We can't do the chronic cardio could backfire. Starving yourself could backfire. Eating the healthy, wrong foods can backfire. All of these things, and all of the xenoestrogens that we didn't even touch on today, those could be causing the problems and increasing that fat weight, because your body doesn't want to, it needs those toxins protected and encapsulated in the fat cells to store them and get them out of your bloodstream. That's another issue that could be causing the imbalance of hormones. So Kate, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will definitely have you back on. And next time, maybe some of you can come and bring your questions in that we didn't get to today. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you have questions about your own health and I can help you, you can email me directly through the website at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. And I know sometimes it's hard to know where to start. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, and my YouTube channel under Accelerated Health Radio and TV. And you can find this episode and all my episodes on over 100 channels, including including iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Pandora, or whatever podcast platform you subscribe to. Join us every week live at 1 p.m. Pacific time. You can use coupon W4HC20 for 20% off site-wide. Thanks, everybody, and have a great week.